Newsweek is reporting Jake Tapper admits to Megyn Kelly he didn't press Biden on health. CNN anchor Jake Tapper appeared today on the Megyn Kelly show in a candid and at times confrontational interview where he acknowledged key failures in his coverage of former President Joe Biden's health. Joined by Axios reporter Alex Thompson to promote their new book, Original Sin, Tapper directly addressed criticisms from the former Fox News host on her Sirius XM show. Tapper admitted that he and others in the press ignored visible signs of Biden's decline. Published on Tuesday, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again, alleges that Biden's inner circle, including his family and top aides, orchestrated a comprehensive effort to obscure the president's deteriorating condition from the public, donors, and even members of his own cabinet. That is absolutely not true. They were all in on it. Everybody was fully aware that Biden was a dead man. He was a corpse. Do you want to go and do you want to watch the clip here? I think we should watch the clip. It's a long one, but listen to Megyn Kelly.
You're complaining about a cover-up about Joe Biden's mental acuity that failed, that right-wing pundits saw, the right wing in general saw, that independent media saw and reported on, and that was no mystery even to left-wing and so-called mainstream reporters who were not fooled but chose willful blindness instead of honest reporting, and that you were part of it. How do you respond?
It's a tough and fair question. I would say that Alex and I, after Election Day, interviewed more than 200 people, 200 mostly Democratic insiders, and almost all of these interviews were after the election. And they justified to themselves what they had done in terms of misrepresenting how the president was, not just to me and Alex and other reporters, but also just to each other and to the world and to Democrats and to the cabinet, et cetera, by saying that there was this existential threat of Donald Trump and only Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump, and that justified everything in their minds. After that existential threat was over, because the election was over and Donald Trump won, we found, Alex and myself, remarkably willing to talk to us either off the record or on background, or in some cases on the record, about what they saw. One of the things that emerged was that there were two Bidens. One was the fine Biden, serviceable, adequate, and the other one was a non-functioning Biden, and that's the one we saw the night of the debate. And that's the one we saw some clips of here and there that you just showed. And that non-functioning Biden, the one that lost his train of thought in a significant way, not in the way just that every human loses their train of thought, but in a way that shows that he's having trouble articulating his very views. And the one who forgot the name of close aides, who was not able to come up with George Clooney's name, didn't seem to recognize him, all that sort of thing. That non-functioning Biden was, according to our reporting, showed up as far back as 2015, after the death of Beau, where one top aide said that tragedy, the loss of Beau, was like watching somebody pour water on sand.
Tapper goes on to blame the tragedies in Joe Biden's life as to why Joe Biden continued to deteriorate. I think that's ridiculous, and I think this whole situation is just Jake Tapper trying to cover for himself, because I don't think that it was an actual secret. I think it was everyone in D.C. knew. I think that Joe Biden's his cabinet knew. I think that Vice President Harris should have invoked the 25th Amendment. She should have got the cabinet together and invoked the 25th Amendment. And I think they didn't because of political reasons. I think that it would have been terrible for the Democrats overall to actually have to do that. So I'm interested in your thoughts, Aiden.
Did you ever hear the audio of the interview with Joe Biden that got released?
With Robert Hur?
Yeah. He could not remember when his son died.
Yeah.
Like he thought his son died, 2 or 3 years after when it actually happened.
Yep.
And I mean, they obviously all knew. Where was the audio, right? I do think that, I'm willing to give a little bit of grace to some of the more deluded Democrats who genuinely thought it was some kind of right-wing op.
Maybe if they didn't have access to Biden, maybe if they didn't go to the White House regularly.
Right. I'm more than willing to believe that a lot of these grassroots Democrats simply thought, oh, he's a little bit old. They caught him at a bad time, and that's, the age is completely separate discussion. But yeah, the media, they 100% knew. And Kamala Harris, I think that, maybe there was a kind of thinking there if she invoked the 25th Amendment and she was, the first woman president, by
in that way.
In that way, they probably would have lost even more. I mean, Harris barely managed to pull off like an even moderate showing in the election, and the polls for Biden were way worse. Like the defense that they thought Joe Biden was the best person to run against Trump simply was not true, and it wasn't true for a year and a half, before the election. So I think there was a lot of complicity and trying to shore up Biden as much as possible to save the Democrats from embarrassment, and it obviously did not work.
I think as far as the aides and those close to him goes, I think it warrants an investigation, maybe through the House, maybe through the FBI, or exactly who was doing what and to what degree they were protecting or not telling others about the deterioration of Joe Biden. This is especially relevant because it leads to the question of, it begs the question of who's really making these decisions. If he is so senile where he can't remember. I think there was another quote where he forgot when he was VP, and then forgetting the death of the dates of the death of his son. And we probably don't even know the worst of it, but I do think it is worth an investigation because this guy did a lot of very significant things towards the end of his administration and throughout. And there's also a big question about this auto pen stuff where it's not him literally signing off on stuff, and it's just him doing it online. So a lot of question of and I usually hate sounding conspiratorial, but who was really in charge? Who was really running the show when Joe Biden wasn't taking any questions from anybody at the White House, and he was surrounded by these aides who knew what was going on materially, and and throughout the cabinet, it seems like nobody really knew what was going on. Nobody was really in touch with each other. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was even under the knife and unconscious, but he never told Joe Biden. And you have to wonder, did he know the condition of Joe Biden? Maybe he thought not even to tell him, because why would it even matter? So who was in control? Who knew what with the aides and the people around him? And did anybody break the law while doing this? And I think that it's really important questions that we have answered here.
Well, if anyone did, if anyone were to, make any kind of executive decisions without him, that's breaking the law.
And I think it just demonstrates how partisan the media is, because it's like if Trump orders a Diet Coke without a lemon, it's on the front page of Newsweek. You're telling me that not a single aide went to the press once through the 4 years of Joe Biden to casually mention, hey, by the way, this guy's mind slipping. We don't even know what the cancer thing that might have been on their radar. Not a single, we wouldn't see a single, because it would never make the front page. And
so to
Trump
demonstrate
coughs weird,
his
it's on the
senility a
front
little bit more, I'm not a movie buff. I actually don't like watching movies, but I still know what George Clooney looks like. And Joe Biden has been friends with George Clooney for decades, given his involvement in Democrat politics. There was this infamous fundraiser now that Joe Biden goes to. He doesn't recognize who George Clooney is, and has to be nudged by his aide to tell him that who Clooney is. So the fact that he's forgetting these, one of the most famous people on earth, he was allegedly forgetting the names and who his aides were. It really begs the question, who is in charge, and was this man truly making all of the decisions? And if not, who was, and under what guidance were they allowed to make those decisions?
I mean, you see people pull up Biden policy from the 80s, how seemingly conservative his rhetoric is. Maybe he actually is super base, but he just forgot about it. And then
No, and I mean, there were multiple slip-ups too when he said explicitly that he would defend Taiwan, and then the White House ended up walking it back after the fact. And it really makes you think, I don't know, is he baiting him? Is that
That's something that was long-standing U.S. policy.
No, it
not
was
actually come out
strategic ambiguity.
That's what I'm trying to say, but you're talking over me. That long-standing U.S. policy was to not openly say that the U.S. would defend. It was to imply that they would, but to not actually articulate it, because that would cause problems for China.
I think if, and Trump's been saying who had control of the auto pen, right? I think that's a really legitimate question. Of course, the minute they actually try to look into it, people are going to run wild and crazy and talk about Donald Trump persecuting his political enemies and everything. So if I was Donald Trump, I would say, you know, like what they did to Joe Biden was basically elder abuse, and we should be prosecuting these people for for doing that, like a totally non-political attack, just to find out the facts. Because I think, you know, there's a very limited period of time where we're actually going to be able to find out what happened. And if we don't take advantage of it now, it's going to be this big open question, I think, in American history forever. We've had presidents hide illnesses before. I mean, FDR, right? And Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, and his wife, like the first lady, basically, like kind of ran the government. And it's kind of widely known now, but this is a lot different than that, I think, because this is somebody who may have been senile when he got elected, or at the very least rapidly deteriorated afterward. And if nobody in the cabinet knew what was going on, if you believe them, then seriously, who was running the government?
Yeah.
No idea.
Well, good.
It's also worth mentioning, obviously, we recently got the horrible news that he was diagnosed with stage 5 cancer. I'm no oncologist, but stage 5 is late. Or was it stage 4? Stage 4 is stage 5. That's late to the game. And the president is somebody who should, or the former president is somebody who should have his health monitored consistently. Somebody must have missed something here, or missed it on purpose. I don't know how you would miss this in a president or former president. Stage 4 or 5 seems late to the game again. So it's like, who knew what, when, and for what reason was this probably kept in the dark? I hate going into this conspiratorial stuff without any hard evidence, but it's really hard to believe that, you know, a former president, Joe Biden, one of the most important people on the planet at the time, wasn't getting enough health monitoring.
Yeah, well, it was
at Walter Reed to figure out, you know.
There was an aide going to the press today, and they said his last prostate exam was in 2014, which is just very hard to believe.
And there are other tests too that you could do besides the prostate exam.
Like, this is just shocking that
when you're that age, it's what, like every like 2 or 3 years or
Well,
something.
if I understand correctly, at 70 they stopped doing the prostate exams or for testing for prostate cancer because the cancer is so slow moving generally that if you get it, by the time it actually develops into cancer, you're likely going to be out the door anyways.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.